Tonight on Reel to Reel, John Michael Talbot talks about the message in his music.
And Michael Gallagher discusses the message of rock videos.
Dr. Richard Fitzgibbons talks about relationships.
And we'll meet comedian and social worker Michael Pritchard. Hello, I'm Father Dave McAllen.
And I'm Isabel Garvey-LaGrosse. Welcome to Reel to Reel. In the beginning of the liturgical renewal, musical artists like Ray Rep and Sebastian Temple worked hard to bring music to the pews. The work they pioneered has been continued to the present by a number of talented and dedicated people.
We're going to meet now one of the important members of this group, Grayson Warren Brown.
Standing in the shadows of downtown Buffalo, New York is Holy Cross Roman Catholic Church. The parish is known for family involvement, yet the parishioners still felt they needed to enhance their liturgies. So what did they do? They called in a liturgical consultant.
Praise the living God. Praise the living God. Praise the Lord with all your heart. Praise the living God. Let me hear you sing. Ready?
His name is Grayson Warren Brown, a 36-year-old Episcopalian-raised singer-songwriter. He first became involved in the Catholic Church at age 15 when he was hired to play the organ at St. Anne's Parish in Brooklyn. That was in the mid-60s, a time of great turmoil, change, and growth in America, and in Grayson's eyes, in the Catholic Church as well. So he joined the church, but for Grayson Brown, life as a Catholic wasn't quite what he expected. He saw great opportunity for worship in a church that refused to reach its potential. So he began traveling around the country, giving workshops trying to put life into liturgy and trying to change his newfound church from within.
It was never really my intention to become a Roman Catholic. And coming straight from the Episcopalians, I assumed, wow, the Catholic Church is dynamite. There was this Pope who had made a statement about opening the windows and letting fresh air in. And there were all of these people who were beginning to reevaluate who they were as a church and make some painful choices in their lives, but seem to be deciding we're going to stand up, we're going to grow up, we're going to face whatever it takes so that we can be a little more fresh and a little more loving.
As years passed, Grayson's travels taught him to recognize what he felt were the shortcomings of Catholicism. He saw a church that didn't fight racism, that wouldn't allow women priests, and lifeless liturgies that soon became his biggest frustration.
We do not have to have dry, lifeless liturgies on Sunday. We as Catholics can be true to our Catholicism and still experience and feel something on those Sunday liturgies. One of the most glorious aspects of my work, one of the things that have just warmed me for years, is seeing people who thought that singing and praying with feeling and emotion was something that belonged to some other religion. It's just so warm to see Catholics who've been Catholics for 30, 40, 50 years saying, I didn't know we could do this.
Today, Grayson gives workshops across the United States, coaching pastors, priests, and parishioners on how to improve their liturgies and how the Mass should affect their daily lives.
What I hope to do is to get people in our church to realize that the Mass is not the end. It's only a means to an end, and the end is more important. And so if you have a group of people who can praise the Lord, feel strength, be encouraged to do the Lord's business by singing gospel music, well, let's get on with it. Let's sing gospel music so we can be about the things we really are supposed to be about. Really what we're called to be is Christians, not Catholics, Methodists, or Lutherans. We're called to do the Lord's work, and that's out there.
And now let's go from the spiritual to the commercial world of music. Do the letters MTV mean anything to you? Well, to the music industry, they mean big bucks. And Mike Gallagher's here to tell us why.
Hello, I'm Mike Gallagher. I live, heaven help me, in a relentlessly upwardly mobile suburb. It's a kind of place where young matrons wear gold chains with their velveteen running suits when they pick up their moppets at nursery school. Now, the 9-year-old daughter of friends of ours, Catholics like us, was invited to a birthday party by one of her classmates. The mother of the birthday girl, our shocked friends later discovered, had hit upon the perfect way of entertaining her daughter's guests. Not for her presiding over charades and apple bobbing. Instead, she put a video cassette in the old VCR and then went back, presumably, to studying for her realtor's exam. What did she select? Flash dance. Oh, fuddy-duddy that I am, I felt perturbed when I heard about this. But now, after looking through some of the fare available all hours of the day as part of the regular cable TV package, I guess I was too hasty in my moral indignation. Now, Flashdance has some nastier language, it has some explicit nudity, but in all essentials, it's exactly the kind of thing many of these kids had already been watching on their home screens. Flashdance, with its blaring score, its mindlessness, and its sexual suggestiveness, was nothing more than an MTV segment stretched to feature film length. MTV, or music television, began in 1981 and was immediately hailed as the salvation of the depressed record industry. Each segment is a dramatization of a song, sometimes with a kind of story, sometimes wholly impressionistic. What disturbs just about everybody about MTV, except the busy entrepreneurs cashing in, of course, is the faddish sex and violence that permeate it. A male singer, for example, sits by the edge of an empty pool at the bottom of which a band plays. He is flicking a knife. And as he flicks the knife, we get glimpses of a beautiful young woman changing into a swimsuit. The implication of menace is quite obvious. Sometimes the violence is not overtly sexual, but directed against authority. In a number by Twisted Sister, for example, a domineering teacher succumbs to the righteous force of rock, and he suffers the same kind of punishments dealt out to Wile E. Coyote in the Roadrunner cartoons. Nor will the Nazis ever die as long as MTV lives, for Nazi garb and regalia are big, especially, of course, in the not infrequent numbers where the sex is laced with sadomasochism. The concept behind the selling of MTV is just as disturbing as much of the content. The concept is narrowcasting as opposed to broadcasting. The folks behind MTV aren't interested in everybody. Unlike network TV, they write off most of us. They're aiming at the 12 to 34 group. And the dirty little secret behind MTV is not sex and violence. That's no secret, that's obvious. The secret is money. The MTV segments function as commercials. They sell records and video cassettes and all those extravagant clothes and artifacts. All these are pushed on your children as relentlessly as the Saturday morning cartoons push sugary cereal. The effect on your children's intellectual and moral development is just about the same. Can I prove it? No. But only because it's much easier to demonstrate tooth decay than mind decay. And Frank, at 12 years old, could put her thoughts down on paper with grace and force. She could read Dickens in English. How many of our young MTV devotees even heard of Dickens? How many, for all their verbal glibness, can write coherently? MTV and rock in general hold such sway over the minds of so many of our young people simply because nature abhors a vacuum. How about ourselves? Is our own religious faith neatly compartmentalized, or does it extend to all phases of our lives? Do we ourselves, for example, go in for questionable entertainment on the score that is just entertainment, has nothing to do with the way I feel, I believe? If we do, and if that's the example we give our children, we shouldn't be too shocked if they do exactly the same thing. Fire must sometimes be fought with fire. And no fire burns as fiercely as the fire of faith. The problem, as Chesterton put it, is not that Christianity has failed. The problem is that Christianity has never been tried.
And on that note, let's visit with Dr. Richard Fitzgibbons for this week's Relationships.
We live at a time in which children are being abandoned by fathers at a rate that has no precedent in the entire history of mankind. Today I'd like to talk about male relationships, which are very critical at this time. Most of us as males have been loved by our fathers as much as they were able to love us. But many of our fathers didn't praise us and compliment us as much as we needed to be praised and complimented. So that most males have grown up with a certain degree of insecurity or a lack of confidence because they didn't receive this praise and affirmation from their fathers and from other key male authority figures in their lives. This has led many men to hurt other people because of their own emotional wounds, although rarely do they do this deliberately. As a young boy, Freud was one day in his parents' bedroom doing something mischievous, and his father said to him, "Sigmund, you will never amount to anything your entire life." This occurred when he was 7 years old. Late in his life, he told his biographer that these words of his father's haunted him for his entire life, and that with each success that he had, he engaged in a mental conversation with his father and said, "See, I really have amounted to something after all." The major way in which males try to undo their insecurity is through being affirmed and praised by other males. This may lead to obsession in work, obsession in sports, obsession with acquiring money. And in some males, it's not through this method, but through using women to bolster their concept of themselves as men. Now, these wounds of male insecurity can be healed in a number of different ways. First, through daily being thankful for their male gifts and male beauty that come from their own fathers and from God. Secondly, showing their love, realizing that their love is a powerful male gift. Thirdly, forgiving other male authority figures who are not complimentary or affirming. And finally, showing love to these children who so much need a father's love. This is Dr. Richard Fitzgibbons.
There's more to come on Reel to Reel. When we come back, we'll meet comedian and social worker Michael Pritchard. So don't go away. Some people can find clouds on the brightest of days, yet other people feel that every cloud has a silver lining. That's the type of person we're going to find in Michael Pritchard. Let's watch.
Probably the hardest commodity to find in the entertainment business are young comedians. David well
On the 11th of November, 1980, Johnny Carson introduced to his viewing audience a new young stand-up comedian.
So I'm glad you're in a good mood. He won first place. In San Francisco, they had a stand-up comedy contest. He works at a club called the Other Cafe, and he will be there on Friday and Saturday. He's a little wacko, which you have to be a little wacko to do comedy. So would you make him welcome, please? His name is Michael Pritchard. Would you welcome Michael?
Yes, it is true. I'm a little bit wacko. You know, I'm one of those people, I don't know what you people are like, but I personally am one of those kind of people that loves to get pulled over by the police, you know? Step out of the car, please. I always get out of the car like this. We are the boys from Wacko State Farm. We didn't mean to do any harm. We were only having fun, throwing a bitch on everyone. Get back in the car, please.
They say that being introduced to Michael Pritchard is like being introduced to a crowd.
Oh, for God's sake, don't make that face like that, young man. Someday your face is going to freeze that way.
The voices and faces of many different characters live inside this man, and at 6'6", 240 pounds, he's got room enough for all of them.
Hey, let's have a sofa fight.
He's a big man on the verge of the big time, but he's not your run-of-the-mill stand-up comedian.
You know, it's like kind of like every time you stick your hand in a fire, you get burnt. Do you ever learn from that?
While the funny side of Michael Pritchard was winning the annual comedy contest in San Francisco, his more serious side was also being honored by the state of California as Social Worker of the Year for his work with juvenile delinquents.
I went out to San Bruno to do a show over Christmas, you know, and...
For years, he's had this other audience here in Juvenile Hall. Purse snatchers, rapists, shoplifters, murderers, and all of them kids.
Any of you guys ever had a visit over to the penitentiary? I'll see San Bruno, I'll see the jail, I'll see all the guys I knew from here. I'll go from San Bruno, I'll go over to San Quentin, do a show. I'll see all the guys I know there. And you know where you are right now is like the last place to pull the reins up and say, woe to the horse. On CYA,
a lot of the kids that I have never known love. And so if for the first time in their lives, you're the first person who comes into their life, and maybe they've been beaten and whipped and abused and been used as a human ashtray, and they've been, just everything has ever happened to them. They're starting to dish out on society what they've been taking. And you get that kid who's 10 or 12 or 14 to finally respond to your love, to finally hug back. I don't know that there is any greater feeling in the world.
And my favorite of all stories about working with the kids, and sometimes they're pretty violent, sometimes they're pretty aggressive. I said, see one of the kids jumps up on his bunk and he grabs a pencil, right? He's ready to kill me. Come in here, man, I'll jab your eye out. Come on, man. Come on in here, I'll jab your eye out with this pencil. Being the brilliant guy that I am, I said, no, that's not gonna happen. So I went and I got a mattress and a couple blankets and I wrapped them around my arms, you know, and I go into his room like this. And I peeped around that mattress and I went, please don't stab me in the eye. I love you. If you do that, you might hurt me. Boy, you better put that pencil down, Pilgrim. I'm getting mighty peeved. He looked at me and he said, I'm messing with you, man. You's a fool.
Humor and love help him through many tense situations. But it wasn't always this way. There was a time when he looked for help in a bottle.
Living in social work caused me to become depressed. And I never really, you know, I got into the bottle very heavily because you see so much of the world and how bleak and how desperate and how dark it is. I got out of the bottle, I crawled out of the bottle. I felt like God had like picked me up and dusted me off and said, okay, here. Now talk to people about what you lived through and the pain and the sadness, but tell them there is a better side.
Since then, Pritchard has spent most of his time lifting the spirits of others, showing them how to poke fun at life.
Like, I like walking up to the cops here in San Francisco, like,
Excuse me, I was going down Geary Avenue when I ran into a huge big wall.
Here, as an honorary member of the board of the Special Olympics, he has a chance to share his sense of humor with those who are often themselves the butt of jokes.
You want to say, here in San Francisco, we know how to have fun. Don't we know how to have fun?
God has a sense of humor because he gave us a sense of humor. And we are made in his image and likeness. And I don't care what any of those serious people out there say.
I like the little 3-year-olds. They're great. Come here.
No, I don't want to, Mike.
Come here.
Come here. I'm gonna eat your face.
That's Michael Pritchard, and I think Mike's going to make it because he is deeply disturbed.
Some people call me the space cowboy. Yeah. Some call me the gangster of love. Some people call me Maurice, 'cause I speak of the pompatus of love.
Humor is that little light that flicks on inside you and tells you that it's okay. Humor is hope.
I'm a joker, I'm a smoker, I'm a midnight toker. I get my loving on the run.
A few weeks ago, Franciscan brother John Michael Talbot was in the Delaware Valley for 2 sold-out concerts.
Prior to his performances, we had the opportunity of speaking to this amazing author, composer, and convert to Catholicism.
You know what I like about playing in churches? Is not only can you see me, am I up? Well, some of you can. But I can see you. The lights are on. It's so neat. I can see your faces.
Since he was a teenager, John Michael Talbot has been looking out over audiences gathered in halls to hear his music. The crowds are still gathering, but today Talbot's music is being heard and appreciated in an entirely different light than it was in those earlier days.
St. Augustine said it when he said, "He who sings prays twice." So I'm going to ask you to join at the beginning of this evening to sing with me, to pray twice with me. And he will save all of the weak and tender-hearted, and the meek forever shall dwell in their land. Sing hallelujah to the wonderful Counselor. Sing hallelujah to the mighty God. Sing hallelujah to the Father forever, and sing hallelujah to the true Prince of Peace.
Brother John, we're familiar with gospel music and hymns and even some contemporary Christian music. How did you get your start?
Well, my start in Christian music happened when I became an intentional Christian. I was involved in secular music with a band called Mason Prophet that was a relative success in the secular world. We weren't setting the world on fire or anything. Late 60s, early 70s, and during that time period I went through a conversion where I had to go back and rethink some of the values and some of the spiritual realities that I was raised with, that I had rejected. And I went through an experience in prayer with Jesus. And at that point in time, I became a Christian musician because I became an intentional adult Christian.
And my spirit exalts in God my Savior, for He has looked with mercy on my lowliness.
John Michael Talbot stayed with his music, but began looking closely into the lives and values of the people and the world through which his music flowed.
At that point in time, it was really just, it was a matter of seeing people that I had always respected in the secular music field, getting a chance to see them personally, not just on a stage, to see them in dressing rooms and in hotels and to tour with these individuals and find out what are they like as people. Basically what I saw was good people, people seeking beauty and art, and at that point in time a morality, an anti-war morality, to be specific, with the Vietnamese War. They were looking for good things, but most of them were incredibly frustrated, and some of them were in fact tormented in their own heart. I can remember seeing individuals that I respected crying, you know, like a baby, you know, at parties when they'd have, you know, too much to drink or smoke or whatever, and seeing them break down and their inner self coming out, their frustrations coming out. And I said, if this is where everything I everything I consider to be important is, if this is where it ends up, then I had better rethink my values and rethink my positions. And I began to pray. I began to say, God, if you were there, I want to know you. And the answer that I received was in a very distinct, clear understanding that Jesus, the person of Jesus, was answering my prayers after my seeking and saying, God, who are you?
After spending 2 years in near isolation and creativity, the artist converted to Catholicism and became a Franciscan brother. His increasingly popular works include single-instrument songs of prayer, as well as full choir, orchestra, and liturgical dance pieces like Eternal Light, which he performed last month in Trenton and Philadelphia. Brother, when you're not on tour, where are you hanging your hat, or your cow, as the case may be?
I'm part of what's called the Little Portion Hermitage, and we're a new community among many new communities throughout the world that are trying to go back and rediscover the original fire of Francis of Assisi and bring that fire into today's world to continue to spread the fire of the gospel. You know, Jesus says, I've come on the face of the earth, you know, to spread a fire. How I wish it were ablaze already. We found that the way that fire gets set off in each individual's heart is through prayer. I think really what's really happened is I found the answer in Jesus and the home in the church.
So come to us, Lord, come our Father, come our Father, come our Father.
Grayson Brown and John Michael Talbot have received acclamation for the work they've done, but what about those who serve us every week in our parish churches?
Maybe this Sunday would be the perfect time to thank those musicians who serve you so well. Next week on Reel to Reel, we'll discuss the state of black Catholics in the church with members of a black parish in Washington.
And with local guests in our studio.
And don't forget to let us hear from you. Write us here at Reel to Reel, room 222 North 17th Street, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 19103. Thank you for joining us. Good night.
Good night. And remember, Jesus is Lord.